friends and listeners. We are proud to present today's guest, Miss Laura Schmidt. Miss Schmidt graduated with a degree in the management of computer science systems as well as an MBA from Marquette with a focus on leadership studies. Miss Schmidt worked for Northwestern Mutual Life for 15 years and was responsible for enterprise software, user-centered design and testing, and technology research. She also served as the executive director of an education foundation for nearly 5 years. Ms. Schmidt later joined the SDNB as a consultant, where she provided leadership and support to strategic planning and improvement efforts, developed corporate relations strategies, and represented the district in local, regional, state, and national efforts that support talent pipeline objectives. Ms. Schmidt also worked as the first director of corporate relations for the Milwaukee School of Engineering, MSOE, with the primary objective of aligning corporate and university objectives to form mutually beneficial partnerships. She now serves as the Chief Talent Development Officer for the Milwaukee Tech Coalition, where she's responsible for talent pipeline strategies in K-20, as well as re-upskilling to support the coalition's goal to double the tech talent in the greater Milwaukee region. Ms. Schmidt, welcome. We are so excited to have you on our show. Let's talk computer science. Wow, I have so many questions. I was like, where were you when I was working at Harley Davidson? We had such a trouble finding qualified tech people.
Absolutely.
So tell me more about your work, your current work, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, the Milwaukee Tech Coalition is a group of now close to 100 members, and those members are either corporate, nonprofit, education providers, who are all collectively committed to inclusively doubling the tech talent in the greater Milwaukee region. So we do that through 6 strategy lanes. 3 of them are devoted to increasing the demand for tech occupations in the greater Milwaukee region because it's good for the economy, it's good for business, and it's good for Milwaukee. And then the other 3 strategy lanes are focused on the supply side. And that's really sort of where I focus. One of the strategy lanes is the attraction and retention of our mid-level talent, which is really, really difficult. All markets across the country are having similar constraints and issues. The other area on the supply side is on the K-20, which is really that pipeline of students that are coming through our schools all the way through graduate studies. And then the third strategy is really around that and upskilling of existing talent who might either be not in the roles, maybe they're underemployed, maybe they're unemployed, maybe they thought they wanted to get into tech, but they haven't quite found their way yet. And so we're looking at different strategies related to that. We can dive into any of those that you'd like. My background is predominantly, like you'd said, in the corporate setting. That was the first 15 years of my career. But I'd say that probably my favorite position was when I was working at the K-12 level, because I think that was an opportunity for us to really transform the way in which we reach students. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about the conversation that we're having today, because I do think it makes a difference on the way in which we present these occupations and these opportunities to students. I happen to work in a suburban school district, and we struggled with just reaching the students with the right message at the right time. That issue is even much more significant when we're working in an urban environment where the students have so many other barriers and issues that they need to be able to overcome in order to even get to a conversation around what do you want to do someday. So very passionate about the impact of that work. And now my role at the coalition sort of is the culmination of all of the work that I did on the industry side, the K-12 side, the higher education side, and the nonprofit side. It's really I feel very lucky and honored to be in the position I'm in right now.
So when did this start, Milwaukee Tech Coalition?
Actually, it started, was really a conversation that occurred beginning with Northwestern Mutual and Advocate Aurora Health. And they developed a collective impact framework that was started in 2017. And one of my associates at Northwestern Mutual had invited me to participate at that time. That work for the first 2 years was really about volunteerism, and a lot of people who were really committed to this cause came together to start talking about what it could or should look like. That was foundational because it formed sort of the basis of the strategy lanes that we have now. What was missing was, in my opinion, that ability to have a governance structure and the formalization of the organization. And so to Northwestern Mutual and Advocate Aurora Health credit, they created a nonprofit. They created bylaws. They hired my boss, our first CEO, who's a rock star, Kathy Heinrich, and then she brought me on as her number 2 employee. So anyway, that's where we started. We now have a slightly larger team, all equally amazing individuals. I just feel so lucky to work with. And we've grown from 6 members to nearly 100 members in the course of just over a year. So it really is sort of a neat journey.
Yep. Yes. So the members are like the local corporates and education organizations like schools, like startups like us.
Correct. And our governance structure basically sets up the ability for us to create priorities based on what our members really want the organization to do. So it is a membership-based organization. It's still collective impact framework. They do a lot of heavy lifting for us, but we provide sort of the backbone organization to convene people and to make sure that the ideas that our members have are able to come to fruition. In addition to that, this year I did focus on some other networks. We do have some voices that are missing in our governance structure, and just because of the way that our bylaws are set up, I felt like I was missing certain opinions, perspectives, and so I did set up a few different groups that meet quarterly. The first was a K-12 Computing Alliance. That is a group of predominantly nonprofit organizations that are really focused on this goal of reaching more students. The second was a higher education partnership. We have the Higher Education Regional Alliance here in the southeastern Wisconsin. They are doing amazing work. That is comprised of all the presidents and chancellors across all of our higher education institutions. Not all of them have the same level of focus on tech and tech-related occupations. So we formed a subset of that group, and we've been working with them quarterly to be able to take a look at workforce data, take a look at completion data, STEM, the number of students that are involved in STEM disciplines, those things. And they've been really, really helpful to launching different events and activities that we've been having going on throughout the year. And then the third group, which is not as much about K-12, but is really our reskilling provider network. So we have a list of criteria that make sure that those organizations that are helping us to inclusively double the tech talent are focused on diversity, equity, inclusion. They have a pathway to employment, and they have been amazing to work with as well. Just really great collaborators. Some friendly competition, I'm sure, but for the most part, are all working together towards that collective goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's room for multiple people, and even from customer perspective, it's good in terms of competition, and like everyone has different needs. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is really absolutely phenomenal what you guys are doing. Does other cities have something like this?
We are part of a group called Tecna, which I'm not going to remember exactly what the acronym stands for off the top of my head, but unfortunately, but they are really a collection of groups like ours, where you have companies and nonprofits, and they're basically creating an alliance around tech occupations. Because one of the things that you probably know as well as anyone is tech is embedded in every industry. And so what happens is that it gets forgotten sometimes. And so Tecna allows groups like ours to be able to share information across our organization, but then again with other markets, and we've learned from them. We have a lot of educational resources that we are able to participate in, and that allows us to operate and most efficiently and also build capacity very quickly. So yes, there are other organizations like ours. We all have our own, unique personality, our own unique priorities. But one of the great examples is that we now partner with an organization out of Seattle called Apprenti. They are the first Department of Labor contractor for tech apprenticeships in the country. And they were a strategic partner of Tecna. So we knew right away that they would be a great partner for us. And so they've been working with us now for over a year to build out tech apprenticeships in the greater Milwaukee region. So that's a good example of how we can share best practices.
Yeah, is that a nonprofit as well?
Yes, it was started out of a group like ours, the Washington Technology. There's a WTIA, Washington Technology Association, but they started Apprenti out of that organization, and now they've really started to implement across the country in different markets.
Yeah, that's so. My second question, I think you already addressed. How does Milwaukee Tech Coalition work to increase tech talent in the area? Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, on the demand side, we have a group that really does focus on tech jobs, which is how do we attract more companies to the greater Milwaukee region that want to create more tech jobs. A good example of that would be Galaxy Solutions and OpenGov. We have a number of other companies that we actually partner with the Milwaukee 7 to try to identify how to make Milwaukee as attractive as possible for companies who want to move here, to make sure that they have talent. And so that's why you look at that balance between demand and supply. We will not attract organizations to come to Milwaukee unless we're able to provide a really high level of quality talent. So that's why these things have to balance out. So that's another way that we work within the region. We are in the process of developing and launching a new attraction site, which will provide a lot of really great materials and other resources for those that are coming from other parts of the country. So that's another way that we work. And then anything that we can do to build capacity for our members, where we can do something better together than they can do individually, those are the things that we lean into.
Okay, yep, that sounds really good. So in either K-12 or higher ed or like reskilling, can you please talk about the different trends that are happening in the CS education? And do you notice any major changes recently?
Yeah, I really am lucky. I've been part of a group at the national level that has been looking at the guidelines for expanding the idea of what computer science could or should be to be much more broad. I think that now that we see tech being really embedded and the careers and the occupations are expanding, it's been very difficult, I think, for education providers to keep up, to be honest. So when you look at, let's say, an accounting major, you look and you say, well, what does accounting look like in a digital transformation? It's a totally different career that you would prepare for. When we think about marketing, traditional marketing occupations have now changed to digital marketing. So what does that look like? And so students are really having a hard time, I think, evaluating their post-secondary choices, because they know that they want a job that is set up for the 21st century, but not all schools have been able to keep up in other parts of the country or even in Wisconsin. And so I think that's a transformation is where higher education and even K-12 is looking at, what does this look like during in an innovation economy where everything is moving digital? It just changes the way we prepare. And so what we're trying to do is think about ways where we can partner with those education providers to be able to offer skills accelerators like we did this summer on data and AI, things like that we can do, that we can maybe do quicker, but that eventually will become more pervasive. So at the national level, I'm involved with AI for K-12, which is developing guidelines for AI education in K through 12 schools. They do it by grade band. It's amazing. The people that are involved are unbelievably great. And then the other group that we just did is we developed a paper with CS for All on some of the public policy issues related to AI and data science education. And so that's something that's still being drafted. So you look at these national organizations, I'd say the trend is expanding the concept of what computer science is. One of the things I think that we do a disservice with when we look at K-12 education and computer science in K-12 is many schools still treat it as an elective. And
Yes.
electives are not accessible to all students, and it creates a barrier, especially for those students that are been historically underrepresented in tech. And so that is something I hope that we can all work together to change. So the way we do that
Right.
is embedding it. And I know that you know that better than anyone. So the more inclusive we can become in the way in which we teach not only computer science concepts, and when I say computer science, I'm really talking about, you know, the standards, which aren't necessarily only for computer science majors, they're for all students. I think that that's the piece where we have to start talking to students differently about what technological literacy means and how those computer science standards really do affect the way in which they're prepared for any role, not just a tech role.
Yep. Yeah. Totally makes sense. Yeah. I could take a tangent on this. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like having a basic understanding of how computers think is fundamental for this generation, and unfortunately, we are not testing on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Yep. Yep. So, what do you think? How can schools increase this education? Like, I mean, someone told me I have to start testing computer science. I don't know if another test is needed, but yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting you say that. There was a conversation I had with some individuals in the state where we were talking about how we measure the ability that students are ready, and it was all based on whether or not a school offered a CS elective. One of the things that I don't know is clear is that measuring how many schools offer a CS elective doesn't mean much, because if they don't run it, they don't staff it, and they don't purposefully recruit for it, it just doesn't run. So they still get credit for offering the class, and then they haven't impacted any students. So that always has bothered me a little bit in the way in which metrics are approached. That really bothered me. So I think we do have to be really purposeful and say, what is your end goal? The end goal is not to offer computer science. The end goal is to impact students' lives by making them aware of the opportunities in tech. And the reason why tech's important is, one, because it's pervasive, and two, because it actually does provide the ability to have a higher level of income, which for some is life altering. And so it makes a difference in the trajectory of their life and what they can afford, and how many jobs they have to hold just to get through the week, and all of those kinds of things. And so when I look at this work, it's really about, the passion is about that, because someone that was not in tech and maybe is making $30,000 a year, and they have the ability and the aptitude to become a tech professional, and they can make $75,000 a year, that is life changing for them and their family. So that's a pretty big deal. But I do think that in terms of that, when we look at schools, I think it's the way in which we talk about CS that is doing a disservice. I went to school at a time when computer science didn't exist in schools. I was told to look into computers as a career because it was 100% job placement. And I went, that's why I'm going to college. So of course I'm going to go into that. And so I loved it, but it was the way in which it was presented. It was presented in terms of my opportunities in the future. And I wanted to have a business degree, and it aligned to my strengths. And so that was why I went into it. Actually, women in tech has actually decreased since the 80s. That dates me, but it actually has gone down, which is crazy. And I don't know what all the factors are. But I do think that we do ourselves a disservice by calling it a CS elective. And most students will say, I'm not going to go into CS. And they don't even realize that it's
Yes,
so
yes.
foundational to so many careers. So that's, I'd say, the one thing that schools could be doing is talking about how you talk to students about, tech skills and why they're important to all students, not just some students.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, like only 3% African Americans take computer science in high school or beyond. And while like in the world where we're living with Teslas and all, even if you want to become a car mechanic, you need some understanding of how computers think. And like if they decide to pursue technology degree, as you said, these are the highest paying and highest demand. So,
Yeah, I think a good example of that, and I love the Hour of Code movement that happens during computer science week every year, but it assumes that hour of code is the only way to expose a student to careers in tech. And I think that I don't know, my whole perspective has changed being part of the AI for K-12 movement, because when I think about the guidelines that the computer science teachers developed for a kindergartner, and all it really is talking about changing the way we talk about our senses to include the way that computers sense things. And what does that mean? So that I found fascinating. So if you think about something that's simple, and in the way in which we educate, the kids love it, they gravitate towards it, they're capable of it, but we don't think about it that way. We think of it more as coding. Well, there's a lot more that we could be doing. I think with data, when I think about data literacy and technological literacy and what that really means, and why those literacies aren't necessarily taught in school, that's the other piece that I think is really too bad. So, what the work that some of the schools that I work with are doing is just amazing, and they're embedding it. They are measuring for it, they are assessing for it, and they're trying to identify by the time a student graduates if they actually do possess data literacy skills and technological literacy skills. That's huge, because that's their North Star. So that makes a difference, and it makes
yeah,
it meaningful and relevant to the students as well.
yeah, totally agree. So, so what do you think is an ideal solution in terms of resources for the schools to improve and increase computer science education?
We just participated. I mentioned the CS for All did a beautiful job bringing together leaders across the country to talk about data science and artificial intelligence education and how all these things convene. I really, one of the things I learned through that process was the importance of our higher education partners. And many of those that participated in that convening were from higher education, and they were doing amazing work in other parts of the country to help with professional development and curriculum writing and resources and all those other things. They need funding to do those things, though. So in our area, the best practice I look at is, of course, Marquette. Marquette University has a Pump CS program. They provide professional development. They provide ongoing support to computer science teachers. And their focus is not just on an elective or just creating a high school computer science teacher, but actually embedding that practice throughout K-12. That, to me, is the game changer. When you have a higher education resource in a region that is able to provide and scale that kind of support, that's critical. So I give them a lot of credit. I know they're overworked and understaffed. So I hope that there's something like that in every region that wants to be able to build out their CS competencies. But it also needs to include that broader perspective of data science and AI education as well. One of the things that's happening right now in the state of Wisconsin is that we are in the process of drafting and finalizing a computer science strategy. Many other states have that. We're just a little bit behind on that. So I'm just so excited that the state has picked that up. I think that will make a difference. The other thing that the state is doing right now is they're really employing the CISAs, which is our educational service agencies, to be able to offer CS for All script workshops, which is strategic planning for CS. These workshops are really predominantly meant for curriculum instruction professionals and superintendents and building leaders. They bring in their computer science teachers, but they are considering it part of their overall strategic plan. That's a critical lever. And then the other thing I've seen happening that I'm really excited about is our CSTA Dairyland chapter, which is our Computer Science Teachers Association, is starting to look at how to expand the resources that they're providing to their membership to include data science and AI resources as well. So that's really exciting to see.
Yep. Yeah, everything sounds really exciting. So the next couple of years, like Wisconsin is probably going to lead the K-12 computer science education. That's awesome. So this is really very educational, and I'm sure our listeners would feel the same way, and especially the Milwaukee folks. Any final words?
I think the one, this is more on a personal note, I guess, my first introduction to this work around pathways, and that of course includes computer science, data science, all of these different things, really was at the System Now conference. We have an annual conference here every single year. It happens in October. This year it's on October 27th. The keynote speaker is going to be amazing. And that was my first introduction. Joe Gamak from NC WIT, and he was a prior CS teacher. He spoke. And I remember listening to him speak and going, we can do this. We can build out these pathways. And at the time, the district that I was working with didn't have really any in-person computer science classes. And as a result of just attending that conference, I was able to chart a path with the support of the rest of our team to create not only one pathway to computer science, but actually two. So AP Java and AP Computer Science Principles. That actually led to additional pathways in data science and other things that they're doing right now that just are blowing me away. So I really think that everybody has to start somewhere. Going to a conference, I think the Slate conference in Wisconsin is going on right now. Going to a conference and just absorbing that information and then thinking about what that first step is really important. And so the journey in our district took about 5 to 6 years to get to just really good foundation. It doesn't happen overnight, but the resources do exist. It really does take a champion at the district level, whether it's a superintendent or a curriculum instruction director, that really does take that champion to lead it out. It cannot just be one teacher's job. That would be my number one thing. If I could just say, we need district level champions like we had in New Berlin at the time that we were trying to build this out to be able to overcome barriers. So I would say if there's only one final word, make sure you have that. So start somewhere, but make sure you have that champion at your district.
Yeah. I thought, I know New Berlin is very good about computer science classes and all. And I thought I was giving the credit to you because you were in that role. And yeah, I'm sure because you were there, they hired you, they identified the need. It's really good.
Well, it was a whole team effort. I mean, they had, I can't tell you how great that team was, but we had the superintendent was a champion. The director of curriculum instruction was a champion. Our building leaders were champions, and that just trickles down. I mean, I think without all that leadership, it's very difficult to get these new initiatives off the ground. So I give them all the credit.
Thank you so much, Laura, for your time, and thank you for educating us. I'm sure many of the K-12 leaders in Milwaukee and beyond will take advice from your final word. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.